Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe lemor. Parshas Noso, Perek Vov, Pasuk Chav Beis Chav Gimel. Daber el Aaron v'albonov lemor. Speak to Aaron his son, saying, Ko sevorchu as Bnei Yisroel. In this manner, you should bless the Bnei Yisroel. Amor lahem. You should say to them. What's Amor? Rashi, Shikulam Shomim. The halacha is that when during Birchas Kohanim, the Kohanim have to say it loud enough that those who are receiving the blessings actually hear the bracha. They hear the Birchas Kohanim. Shikulam Shomim. Meaning, it's as if you're speaking to Amor Lahem, as if you're speaking to every one of them, that each one of them should be able to hear what actually you're saying. Amor Mole Shlosvorchem B'chipos Behogus. Amor, it would say Amor, it would say speak to them, say to them. Amor means you should speak to them, articulate it in a very clear, distinct manner, not rushed. Ela b'kavona b'lev sholem. But rather you should be focused and believe sholem with the intent. That's Amor. So over here, the Balaturim, it begins Ko Sevorchu, Chofei, Ko. It could have said Tvorches Bnei Yisroel. What's Ko in this manner? So over here, the Balaturim cites we find that the Akedah, Avram says to Eliezer and Yishmael who are accompanying them up to a certain point, he says, we will go till that point and you wait for us, we will return. Also, he said to Avram, Ko Yizaracho, such will be your progeny. Ad kos v'rchani Hashem v'chofei osios b'posuk Shema Yisroel. The 25 letters in the posuk of Shema Yisroel. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. The 25 letters. Chofei pomim loshen bracha b'chumash. Hear this? Bracha is mentioned 25 times in the Chamisha Chumash Torah. Bracha 25 times. Chofei pomim shalom bat chumash. The word shalom is mentioned 25 times in the Chumash. Therefore, it starts Yivarechacha. So the bracha is mentioned 25 times in the Chumash, U'Mesayim b'Shalom, and it concludes with Shalom. Shalom is what? Is also mentioned 25 times in the Torah. Hashem Yivareches Amo v'Shalom. Hashem should bless his people b'Shalom. Okay, that's Kosev Orchu. Now, what is the first bracha? The three brachos. Hashem should bless you and protect you. So, famous Rashi, interesting Balaturim over here. But Rashi is explaining as Chazal, it's a monetary blessing. Your possessions should be blessed. V'yishmerecha, and what does it mean? They should be protected. That thieves or plunderers should not come and take away your money. A person gives a gift to his slave or to a subject, and you're able to give the gift, but to assure the gift is going to remain with the person who receives it, you can't guarantee that. It's possible that thieves, bandits would come, and he'll be victimized, it'll be taken from him. So what benefit does he have from that gift? you could give him whatever you may give, but if he's always in a position where it can be taken from him, so it's not secure. Avla Kodesh Baruch Hu, when Hashem gives that material to the person who knows in Hashomer. So the bracha is you should merit that he should give. And not only that, and he should protect it, that you should be able to retain that monetary gift, that monetary possession. The Sivorecha is monetary. The Yishmerecha, he should protect you, that you should be able to retain whatever he gives you. That's the first bracha. There's a famous question which you know, Yehuda, at a bris, the greatest honor at a bris is the sanduk, the one who holds the baby when the child's being circumcised. It's called the sanduk. Why is it so special? So the reason why it's so special, and not only that, the Mishnah tells us in Yuma that the various roles of responsibility to officiate every day in the Beis Hamikdash, how did they choose which Kohanim? You had families. We spoke about there were 24 families, and they would officiate on a rotation basis over a 24-week period, and then they would repeat itself again. During the Regalim, all Kohanim officiated. It wasn't limited to just the families themselves. Of course, there were so many korbanos, because every Jew had to bring a chagiga, and had to bring chagigas, the festival offering, it had to bring a burnt offering in honor of the regel. So there was an overwhelming labor demand. So therefore, all Kohanim officiated during the regalim. However, the daily korbanos that were brought, the korban tzibur, that was the responsibility of the family. That would have been the family during that particular week. But the additional korbanos, that was assumed by all Kohanim. Okay? There was a service that was done every day in the Beis Hamikdash. It was called Ketores. The Ketores service. Now, how did they determine who's going to be involved in various parts of the daily service? They had it was called the payas. They would take, the Mishnah explains that a Kohen would tell, there was one Kohen who was in charge, oversaw this. He would take off his turban and he would put like lots in this turban. It was similar to that. And then they would get into a circle and he would count to a certain number. He'd pull out the number, and when he would count to that number, that person merited that daily service. He did that particular thing, whether it was the shechita, whether it's receiving the blood, whether it's carrying the blood, transporting to the mizbeach, sprinkling the blood, whether it's carrying the parts of the animal up the kevesh, putting it on the fire, whatever it was. This was distributed through this so-called lottery system. The Ketores, anybody who ever had done the Ketores before wasn't part of this lottery system. Why? Because it was known that whoever was involved in the Ketores would actually merit to become very wealthy. It engendered wealth, guaranteed you become wealthy. So therefore, they would say the only people who are eligible to get in, be part of this lottery were people who never had done it before. Because the ones who already had done it before, they already became wealthy. So give someone else a chance to become wealthy. So they would, when they would make the announcement, when they would make the circle, only chadoshim libkorim, only the new ones, the people who were never involved who had never merited to be involved to officiate in the Ketores, they were part of this group to be picked for the Ketores. Okay, that's the Mishnah in Yuma. So they cite one of the Valitosas that the Sanduk, whoever's the Sanduk, who holds the baby during the bris, his knees are like the Mizbeach, and the bris is bringing Ketores on the Mizbeach. It's like bringing the incense offering on the Mizbeach. So therefore, the one who is the Sanduk, it's as if he's officiating with the Ketores, and therefore it engenders wealth. This is the Bali Tosis, one of the Tosis. Therefore, if a person is a Sanduk, once, he should not be a Sanduk a second time for the same family. If a person is Sanduk for one family, next, if there's another child born to that family, it should be given to another person. And therefore, that's the reason why the Sandok is so special, because the Sandok's like his legs are like the Mizbeach, and it engenders this. Therefore, you receive it once, not more than once. So the Noda Yehuda asks a question. He says, firstly, have you ever seen, usually the Sandokos is given to a Rav. Have you ever seen a Rav becoming wealthy? That's firstly. Secondly, we find Rabbonim, rabbis in the community, they receive the Sandokos more than once. But if we're comparing it to the Ktoros, and we say that once you've been the Sandik, the Ktoros once, that person doesn't receive it a second time, why do we find Rabbonim in communities, they receive the Sandokos continuously? It's not, no one else is given the opportunity to be the Sandok. These are the two questions the Noda asks. So he says, therefore, definitely, it's not something which could be relied upon. Person can take the Sandokos off as he wants, and it doesn't engender wealth, so on and so forth. This is the Noda. So Chassam Sofer responds and says, no, his points are not valid points. Why? Firstly, the Rav who receives the Sandokos continuously, the Morad Asra, that means the rabbi of the community, he's the equivalent of the Kohen Gadol. The only coin that went into this lottery system was an ordinary coin. But the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, he had a right to take every service as often as he wanted. So because the Morad Asra is the equivalent of the Kohen Gadol, because it's his community, therefore that's a right he has. He's able to take it as often as he wants. That's the first. And he says, what about the question, we don't find the Rabbonim becoming wealthy, although they have the Sandokos multiple times? He explains, a person has wealth. We discussed it today. Chas v'sholom, a person could have the wealth taken from him. And it's, person advances and then declines wealth-wise. People have reversals. If a person would be given the wealth, and then because he doesn't have a perfect record, it's going to be taken from him, what would he prefer? Losing wealth is not a simple situation in terms of the aggravation and the pain and suffering he may have. It gives him a certain sense of security, then it's taken from him. So Hashem says, something, even though you deserve the wealth, it will be a wash. You should have wealth, but not giving it to you will atone for certain sins you have, therefore it's not going to be given to you. So therefore one will cancel the other. So that's the reason why, because nobody's perfect. We all have sins, and especially at tzaddik, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the person to pay his debt in this world. As a result of that, therefore it doesn't manifest itself. In wealth, these are the two responses the Chassam Sofer gives. But one answer is because nobody's record is perfect. What would you prefer? To be given to you and taken from you? And then, or not given to you at all, and to atone, and it should be a wash for what? For the negative that's on your record. That's what he says. Reb Chaim Kanevsky, Zech Tzaddik from the Bracha, always held that the wealth we're speaking about doesn't always manifest itself in material. There's the spiritual wealth. The ultimate spiritual wealth is Torah knowledge. There were times Reb Chaim Kanevsky, he would travel all over Israel. Wherever he was asked to be the Sandok, Reb Chaim Kanevsky would travel there. So they asked Reb Chaim Kanevsky, they asked people why. If you have to travel, it's time consuming. Reb Chaim Kanevsky was a person that wherever he was like sitting at the table and studying. He was not distracted. He could sit in the car, learn continuously as if he was not in that car, as if he was sitting in his base medrash. He came to the Sandokos, he put on the talis, they put the child on his lap, they did the bris, picked himself up, went back into the car. He may have gone to another 6 brises that day. But again, he was just being taken from place to place. It did not distract his Torah thought. He never had any lapse. That's the way he lived his life. That's this level of immersion. It was known, Rav Yoshev, Zecher Tzaddik Levrocha, was Reb Chaim Kanevsky's father-in-law. He himself, he was always asked, he had he lived to 104. He had, Baruch Hashem, he had endless grandchildren, great-grand, and everybody wanted him to come to be the Sanduk. Being the Posek Hador, being who he was. If the bris was not in Yerushalayim, he did not go. It was too much for him, he had a learning schedule. He would get up every day at 12 midnight, study till The morning, daven, study till midday, take a nap for an hour and a half. He only slept, went to bed 9 o'clock, got up at 12, 3 hours a day, nap for an hour. That was his daily schedule. Wouldn't interrupt for anything. There's a story of Elyoshiv that one time he slept an extra 3 minutes and he started his night session 3 minutes late. And he had a grandson who was with him when he was older, that before he would start the session, he would prepare a cup of coffee for him. That's what he would do. And because he started the session 3 minutes late, his grandson says, "Should I bring you a cup of coffee?" He says, "No." He says, "Those 3 minutes, that's the cup of coffee." He started to study immediately, would not take out time to drink the coffee before he started to study. This is how calculated they were regarding every minute, how valuable and precious it was. So Rabbi Elyoshiv would not travel to be a sandik. There was no Rav Steinman, Zech Tzaddik Livrocha, was a sandik continuously. And one day he could have been sandik 10 times. To have a person like that being the sandik is a schus for the child. That person should be the sandik for that child. It has a bearing on that person's life, spiritual bearing on that person's life, that he'll be able to attain certain levels of opportunity spiritually because of who the sandik was at the bris. Also has to do with the moil. It's a combination of many things. So we're saying over here, according to some sofer, would you prefer Hashem should give you the money, take it from you, or just let it be a wash? Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. A mortal could give you a gift to a slave, to a subject, but he can't guarantee that that gift is going to remain there. Others could come and he could be victimized. The money could be taken from him, or the money could be lost, and it causes tremendous aggravation for the one who received it. Hashem, the brachas, Yivarecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. He will bless you materially, the Yisroel will protect you, that you should be able to retain that bracha, and you should not lose the bracha, not to suffer any aggravation or have any financial loss.
Sorry, Rabbi, what pasuk, Rabbi?
Yor Hashem ponecha ilecho. Hashem's illumination of his face will be towards you, vichuneko. What's vichuneko? He'll be gracious to you, or he will give you chen, he'll give you charm. That you'll have this certain attractiveness to other people. Rashi, Yor Hashem, I wanted to mention the Sephardo. Sephardo learns differently than Rashi. Yor Hashem v'yishmerecha. Now there's an expression, money does funny things to people. As it says, as Shlomo says, wealth is a test, and impoverishment is a test. The rich man has his tests, and the poor man has his test. And so wealth is not always a blessing. People go astray due to wealth, because wealth does funny things to people. Yivrech Hashem, when Hashem will give you this wealth, the Yishmerecha, he will protect you, that it should not have any negative effect on you. This is how the Sephardo learns the bracha of Yivrech Hashem v'yishmerecha, that you should not be affected negatively through the bracha of what? Of this wealth. Take a look in the Sephardo. Yivrech ba'osher b'nechosim, v'yishmerecha b'negazlonim. No, he said Yishmerecha. Now he says something interesting. This is Farno. We read in Pirkei Avos, "Ein kemach ein Torah." Right? We live in a physical world, so you need kemach. You need material. Yivrech Hashem v'yishmerecha. To be able to have the merit to study, you have to be worthy. You need worthiness for everything. So Hashem will give you the means to be able to what? To study Torah. Because if you don't have the means, you have no choice. You're in a position, you're not able to study. So the bracha is Hashem should provide you with the means, so you should be able to study Torah. Because ein kemach ein Torah. He says the Yishmerecha also learns. Others learn. Just got a very bad news. Rav Gershon Edelstein was nifter. Baruch Dainemus. Did you hear about it? Baruch Dainemus.
He said he was very.
The Balator points out that the three Birchas Kohanim correspond to the three patriarchs, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Yivrech Hashem Yishmerecha, he says, B'schus Avram. That bracha is the merit of Avram. Dichsiv Bei, Hashem Berach es Avram Bakol. Hashem blessed Avram with everything. So that's Yivarecha. And Ushlosha Tevos V'posuk. So Yivarech Hashem Yishmerecha, 3 words. Keneged Gimel Brachos Shenemar Bo Vavarechacha V'ei Bracha. He gave 3 brachos. Vavarecha, he said to him, I will bless you. V'ei bracha, you'll be a blessing. Vavorchem vorchecha, and those who bless you will be blessed. So the 3 words in the first bracha of Bichus Kanim is the schus of Avraham Avinu. It's very interesting. Rashi over there on the Posuk, it says that this is after sorry man who passes away. It says Avram was aged, and Hashem berach es Avram bakol. That's where it's stated. And Rashi cites the famous Chazal. What is bakol? Bakol is b'gematria of Ben. He was blessed with the son Yitzchak. But when he had Yitzchak, that was the bakol. So he pointed out then, if you remember, Avram was a very wealthy man. When he returned from Egypt, before he had children, he was heavily laden with tremendous wealth. The whole story, the disagreement, the fight between the shepherds of Avram, the shepherds of Lot, and this is when they parted their ways. Because Avram's wealth was phenomenal, was wealthy. Avram was declared by the world after he defeated the 4 kings, the Elohim. He has the renown, he has everything. He has wealth, renown. And then the Torah says, what was Avram's blessing? He was blessed with everything. What's everything? Ben. Bakol's b'gematria Ben. Miracle is Ben. Yitzchak was everything. Everything else meant nothing. The wealth, the renown, the fame, nothing. What was Avram's life? Ben. That he had a child who's going to perpetuate, going to be the future patriarch, who's the future of Klal Yisrael. That's all that meant to him. Nothing else meant anything to him. So it's interesting. In his merit, that's material. Avram is material, the material blessing. Because since the material to Avram was what? What was its value? It was purely a means to an end. Right? Avram was the Amud HaChesed. He was the pillar of loving kindness. He had 4 entrances to his home. Everything was Achnosis Orchim. And he used that as the vehicle to what? To bring humanity to what? To monotheism. That was the usage of the material. So in his merit, Yivarecha, his children will merit material blessing. And especially with the Baal HaTurim, because it means Kemach and Torah. If there's no Kemach, there's no Torah. You have to have the material means to be able to have Torah. That facilitates it. The Mishnah tells us in Pirkei Avos that a person who studies Torah, although he's oppressed materially, he's materially lacking, ultimately he's going to study it, Hashem will endow him with wealth. Because Torah, a person who doesn't study Torah, despite his material wealth, ultimately he'll mevatel Torah b'toch ha'chak. Hashem is going to take it from him, and he'll be left with nothing. He'll be impoverished. The one who studies Torah in an impoverished state, ultimately Hashem will endow him with wealth, because he proved that the material doesn't deter him, and he's just as dedicated. So Hashem will make his life easier. And the one who doesn't study Torah, where the money was given to him, the wealth was given to him to facilitate the Torah study, and he whittles away his life and doesn't invest it properly, Hashem will withdraw that endowment. Yivrecha, it's the merit of Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu is Hashem Berach is Avram Bakol. Bakol is Ben. The focus and the emphasis of Avram's life was Yitzchak. This is in Kemach and Torah. Goes hand in hand. So if you remember, at one time we studied the Moral's commentary on Pirkei Avos. It was called what was it called? Eitz Chaim. So he asked the question, Rab Chanina Mendoza, right? Where there's a bas kol every day comes out from Chorev and announces to the world, there was nobody studied Torah b'toch dochak, the way Rab Chanina Mendoza studied Torah. And yet, he had Kav Charuvim, his subsistence was a small measure of carrot from Erev Shabbos to Erev Shabbos. But according to Mishnah Pirkei Avos, if you study Torah b'toch hatchak, Sofel Lulamdo b'toch osher, wanted to receive the wealth. That's the question the Maharal asks, Maharal of Prague. So Maharal answers, he didn't want it. If Hashem wants to endow you, what he said, I'm not interested. If you're not interested, Hashem's not going to impose it on you. He turned it down. He didn't want to be involved in the material whatsoever. That's the reason why. But otherwise, he would have merited to have the wealth because he proved himself. The whole world is sustained in his merit. Alan, I see you.
Yeah, Rabbi, maybe.
There was no the Chofetz Chaim. The whole world came to him for bracha. Chofetz Chaim didn't give a bracha to anybody who asked the bracha. Only if he felt that Chofetz Chaim had Ruach HaKodesh. He was spiritually inspired. If he felt the person, if he knew the person, and the person had some degree of worthiness, so the bracha would have value, we'd give him the bracha, he wouldn't. So he had a student who studied many years by him, and when he was married, he married into a wealthy family. And his father had given him a sizable amount of capital to go into business. He was married for 2 years, whatever, he lost it all. Lost it. So he came to the Chofetz Chaim to share his sorrow with him, and here he had all this wealth, and now he's left with nothing. So as he's speaking to the Chofetz Chaim, he sees like a smile on the Chofetz Chaim's lips, smiling. So he says to his Rebbe, he says, Rebbe, here I'm suffering. Here I had all this wealth and I lost it. And the Rebbe is smiling. He says, I'll explain it to you. He says, wealth is the wheel of fortune. It's known fact, this was in his time, that wealth, even a person that came upon wealth, never lasted more than 20 years. That was the cycle in Europe, for whatever reason. Whether due to displacements, due to the economy, due to the government. Regarding a Jew, 20 years, usually that was the extent of one's wealth. So he says a person studies, and he studies well, and you retain all that Torah. And now you get distracted for 20 years. What happens after 20 years? And now you want to go back to the Beis Medrash, because now you have all this time on your hands. You're not preoccupied earning money. But you realize, because you've been out of it, out of touch, even if you study a little bit every day, it's not being immersed in Torah. So the retention that you originally had, you've lost it. So Hashem was kind to you. After 2 years, he took it from you. So the Torah you have is still intact. Therefore, you should know in the certain way it's a bracha. That Hashem took your wealth sooner rather than later, so you had it for a short period of time, but you were able to retain it. You were able to retain Torah learning. That was what the Chofetz Chaim said to his Talmud, because ultimately it doesn't last long. There's a certain cycle, 20-year cycle. After 20 years, you're left with nothing, not the Torah, not the material. Over here, the bracha, the shmirecha is, as I told you, 2 things. You should not lose it. And according to the other interpretation, it's the Or Chaim, Yishmerecha should not have a negative effect on you. That despite you have the material, you should remain spiritually intact. It should have no negative effect. And it should really be in Kemach and Torah. Famous story, Reb Kiva Eger, the Chofetz Chaim, had said that from the Vilna Gaon until Reb Kiva Eger, there was nobody as great as Reb Kiva Eger. From the Vilna Gaon to Reb Kiva Eger. And Reb Kiva Eger had a number of sons, but his most special son, his name was Reb Shlomo Eger. Reb Shlomo Eger recorded all the writings and published all the response of his father, Reb Kiva Eger. Okay? So Reb Shlomo Eger, when he was about to get married, he was world renowned as being, firstly, he was the son of Reb Kiva Eger, who was the leading Torah sage of the generation. In addition, he was exceptional. He was the most special son of Reb Kiva Eger, and everybody was vying to have him as a son-in-law. So a very wealthy family in Poland said, we want him. We'll give anything that he should marry our daughter. And this family, they supplied all the material to the Polish army, the clothing, the boots, and certain provisions for the Polish army. They're a very wealthy family, observant family. And Reb Kiva Eger said he allowed the match to take place, the marriage to take place, but it was a condition that once a year he would have to meet with the minister who oversaw the purchases for the Polish army. Reb Shlomo Eger would have to be at that meeting just once a year. And for that, the family would underwrite him and his children, his grandchildren, in a very elaborate financial way that he should doesn't even have to think about any monetary responsibility. And Reb Kiva Eger agreed to it. Even though that was preconditioned, you have to take off a day during the year to meet with the minister, it's fine. Reb Kiva Eger was one of the leading Reb Shlomo Eger, his son, was one of the leading Rosh Hashivas in Europe. And when he said a discourse, it wasn't just an ordinary discourse. So the times when the minister would arrive, he'd come to meet him at the yeshiva, where his yeshiva was. And sometimes he'd have to go out for 6 hours. And it was very intense negotiations. So he would excuse himself from his students. He says, I'll be back in 6 hours. When he returned 6 hours later, he was able to continue the shir as if he never interrupted the shir. As if he interrupted his Talmudic discourse. And they were amazed. And they said to Reb Shlomo Eger, how do you do it? With this level of distraction that you have to be so immersed in these negotiations to get back as if you never interrupted the shir, how do you do it? So he said he received the bracha from his father, that that interruption that's necessary to meet the original agreement, that interruption should not affect you as much as an iota negatively. He said, it's due to the bracha I received from my father. That's the reason why I'm able to continue where I left off as if I was not interrupted. That's what Shlomo Eger shared with others. It was due to the bracha he received from his father, from Reb Kiva Eger. So I'm saying, Yivrech Hashem v'yishmerecha. The Kohanim, the bracha they give you, you should be endowed with material. V'yishmerecha. And the material should not affect you negatively. Hashem should watch over you. That should not have any negative effect, which is something out of the ordinary, unusual. Doesn't work that way. Because as they say, a person's a person. And we have our vulnerabilities. And we have many things. And we touch differently.